Here in the Treasure Valley, it's very common for us to get a week or two and sometimes a month or two of fog or just gray days where we don't have a blue sky and we don't see the sun. And on days and weeks like this, I really love really warm, comforting, nourishing foods. So this morning I'm getting ready with making a broth. For this, I am using my really large stock pot. I don't even know how many quarts this is, but it's really large. I'm adding 1 whole chicken to it, a few carrots, a few stalks of celery, a big onion, and about 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. I will just let this simmer on the stove for hours and hours all day, salt it, pepper it, and it will be the best homemade chicken broth ready for soups, stews, or just enjoying on its own. One of the recipes I'm going to make today and share with you is a chicken gnocchi soup. I really love the chicken gnocchi soup at Olive Garden, but this soup that I'm showing you today is all homemade, even with the chicken broth, and it is so much better than Olive Garden's chicken gnocchi soup. The only thing I did not make homemade was the gnocchi, and I haven't mastered that yet, but I will. I'm going to. Every good soup starts with a really good broth. So I just love garlic this time of year. I feel like it helps us stay healthy. And so I'm adding a lot of garlic. These are really big cloves. Of course, this is a really big pot of soup. So 5 garlic cloves isn't crazy. I have at least 3 to 4 gallons of water in here with my chicken, carrots, onions, celery, and garlic. And so 4 to 6, I could probably put a whole clove of garlic in here and it wouldn't be too much. I do not cut my onions and my celery and my carrots into small pieces when I'm making a broth. I don't even cut my chicken up. As you saw, I just put the whole thing in there and let it cook like that for hours and hours and hours. I'm just adding these vegetables, this garlic and these onions and the chicken to flavor and draw out nutrients from the chicken and the vegetables into the broth. I will let this simmer on my stove for about 6 hours before I start my soup. One thing that makes cooking more enjoyable for me in the kitchen is to light a candle or 2, and I got this really beautiful little oil lantern at a thrift store in town, and it had a wick in there. It just had no oil, so I found the oil that I needed for it at the local farm supply store last time we were there picking up food. So I grabbed that, and I just love having this option, and it just makes cooking feel a little more romantic. For lunch today, I am doing a chicken curry, and I am adding pumpkin to this. So this is a pumpkin chicken curry. I do have the recipe for this on the website, as with all my recipes, linked below in the description. But chicken pumpkin curry is super easy because pumpkin is the main base of the sauce. And then of course you've got your garlic and your onions and your spices. So you've got turmeric. I'm using curry powder. I always use a little bit of turmeric. I do like to use some garam masala, a little bit of red pepper flakes, a little bit of cumin, salt and pepper, and just really spice this up. Just taking 3 chicken breasts and putting them into the crock pot, putting them on high. I do like how they just fall apart really easy when you cook them in the crock pot, but I'm going to pour my curry sauce over them in the crock pot and just let them cook together. So some of the juices from the chicken will come out into the crock pot, and it usually will be like a puddle of water, but that will mix with the curry and mix with the curry sauce and add the chicken broth flavor to the curry sauce, and that will be delicious over rice. One of the best crops or plants, vegetables you can plant here in the Treasure Valley is kale. Now, maybe you don't like kale, maybe you do like kale, but I'm going to show you how to cook it in a way that makes it taste delicious. And it's very, very simple with like very minimal ingredients. But the great thing about kale is you can plant it super early before anything else can be planted because it's super cold hardy, and then it will keep growing all through the winter some years. So in the Treasure Valley, sometimes we have like years where we have 5 feet of snow all winter long. And sometimes we have years like this year where we've had only like an inch of snow all winter. It is cold, but the kale just keeps growing, and I can keep picking it and using it all through the winter for fresh vegetables. I'm going to show you how I cook kale in a way that my kids even enjoy it. So the first thing I do is bring it in and get it washed up really well. Honestly, in the wintertime, kale's bugs are not really a problem on kale because it's too cold outside for them. So in the summertime, you'll get little bugs, or they'll lay eggs on the kale leaves, and you've got to really wash them really good. But the nice thing about this time of year is all the bugs have died, and so my kale is pretty much pest free, and I just give it a good wash and don't have to worry too much about that. Then the second thing I do is I chop it up really small, like not like rice, but probably like the size of rolled oats, just nice and small, so that it's easy to chew and it's easy to mix with other things so that your kids don't really notice it as much. It is January, and I have set some health goals and have been making a lot of salads lately. And one of the ways that I really like salad is when you chop everything really small so that you're getting a whole bunch of different flavors in each bite. So that's what I'm starting out with right now. I'm making a kale winter green salad, and I'm just going to chop this kale really small, and then I am going to give it a really quick toast with some butter on a nonstick skillet with some butter and salt. So you're not actually cooking the kale, at least not all the way, you're just barely toasting it. And what that does is it softens it so it's easier to chew. And kale has a little bit of a bitter flavor to it, but when you cook it just a tiny bit, it brightens the color, makes it a brighter green, and takes away that little bitterness that kale does have. Now, one way to make this even better is, instead of using butter, to fry up a couple pieces of bacon first and then cook your kale in the baking grease. I just love how bright green this kale is after you toast it just a little bit. Before you cook it, it's a little bit more muted, more of a sagey green. And then once you cook it, it's just really bright, beautiful green. And I'm also enjoying warm elements in my salads. So I am going to let this cool off a little bit in this bowl while I'm chopping up some green lettuce to go with it. But I really am enjoying, in the wintertime, warm elements in my salad. So maybe some warm chopped toasted kale, maybe some warm quinoa, maybe some warm roasted butternut squash. Those types of things just really warm up a cold salad and make it a lot more satisfying during the winter months. Today, to my salad, I am topping it with blueberries. I also like to do craisins or dried cranberries, and some dried organic sprouted pumpkin seeds that I picked up at Costco, and they are really good and add a nice crunch to your salad. I'm also topping this with the salad dressing recipe that I made on the blog. It's on the blog, of course, I'll link it below, but it's just a simple mayo, vinegar, a little bit of salt, a little bit of sugar, a little pepper, and the vinegar gives that, it's a sweet and sour finish to it that's really good. Now I am starting on the most delicious chicken gnocchi soup. I am all about textures, so one of the important things to me is how I cut up the vegetables. And I don't know if it's just me, but I know little kids are this way too. I appreciate some vegetables cut super small, like the kale, and I appreciate other vegetables cut in different shapes. So today I am mincing my onion pretty small. I always cut onions the same way, and I am just dicing them. So what I do is take the skins off, peel them, slice them in half, and then slice a whole bunch of rings on it, turn it to the side, and slice it from there into really small squares. So I would call that mincing an onion. You don't really notice the onion in the soup at all. And then the celery, I sliver down each of the ribs and then cut those really small too. And once those are sauteed, you really don't notice the celery and the onion in the soup, but it gives it a ton of flavor. So the chicken gnocchi soup at Olive Garden has like a matchstick sized slices of carrots. They're not rounds, they're longer and smaller. I am doing something kind of like that, but these are chunkier. So I'm not making them like a small matchstick. I'm making them like a thicker, more like a wooden candlestick. So they're going to be about a half an inch wide and then thin, like a matchstick thin, but wider. And I really like the texture and how it turned out in the soup. It's not only beautiful, but I really like how it feels in your mouth. And then of course I am going to load it up with a whole bunch of garlic. Just like I added a whole bunch of garlic to the chicken broth already, I am going to use that chicken broth in the soup, but I'm also adding 4 or 5 really big cloves of garlic to the soup as well. I know you might be thinking that's a ton of garlic, but really when you cook garlic down and when you're combining it with other flavors and salting it and seasoning it, honestly, it changes the flavor. It's just not as powerful, but just it's a lot of flavor. So once you get all your vegetables chopped up and into your pan, you saute it, of course, with some butter and then add some flour to that. Give it a stir and let that cook till the vegetables are nice and translucent and the flour is all cooked onto them. Then you add your broth. So I'm using 2 full quarts of chicken broth to this recipe. And I did remove that chicken from the broth pot and pulled the meat from the bones. So I am just using all the white meat here and adding that to the chicken gnocchi soup. This is going to be really hearty chicken gnocchi soup. It's not just going to be mostly a white cream sauce like the one at Olive Garden. This is going to have a ton of really good chicken in it, a ton of nice chunky carrots and vegetables and flavor, and there will be broth, but it's actually a little more chunky than the soup that you'd get at Olive Garden or at a restaurant when you order chicken gnocchi soup. And then one of the last things, I'm getting to the end here, I add the gnocchi. Before I let it sit and simmer for a while, I'm going to add the gnocchi so it gets nice and soft. These are just gnocchi that I picked up at Costco. They're organic. You get a 3-pack for like $10, so it's a pretty good deal. Anyways, I'll add these in and then let those soften up and cook before I add the cream and then finish salting and peppering it to taste. Just showing you how thick it ended up and how nice and chunky this soup is. I hope this video gave you some inspiration on things to plant in your garden and things to cook for dinner at home, some easy recipes. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite things are to cook this time of year, and we'll see you next time.